So welcome everybody to the session today, and I'm going to jump straight in with the agenda for the afternoon. We're going to keep you busy for the next 90 minutes with a short introduction from myself and handing over to the Y4 Institute, the organisation behind the excellent report behind our webinar today. After we've looked at the summary of that report, we will then move into a panel discussion where a number of our members have come together from different aspects of biotechnology to discuss how biotech continues economic development going into the future, as this is a really important topic that we are discussing right now. And then finally, at the end of the meeting, we will include EuropaBio priorities as to how economically we are addressing the development of biotechnology. So there's no such thing as a free lunch, so I'm going to give you a tiny little introduction to EuropaBio and what we do. We are an industry association representing life sciences across all sectors, primarily with applications into the healthcare system, but also very much into sustainable development through industrial biotechnology. You need no reminder of how important biotechnology is within healthcare at the moment, in both diagnostics and therapeutics perspective. We're really seeing the power of sustained investment in innovation coming to fruition as we've had unprecedentedly quick development of vaccines through to clinical use. And in sustainable applications, we're seeing industrial biotechnology positioned incredibly well to help meet the objectives of the Green Deal. And we're talking about all sectoral applications there to reduce the carbon footprint and to enable a more circular economy. And within EuropaBio, we do this in lots of different ways. We look at technology development directly. We very much look at the regulatory and policy ecosystem that allows biotechnology to be developed through to application. We look at how it gets to the market. We look at supporting how small companies grow, because they are the key pipeline for maturing, developing technologies. And finally, we communicate and celebrate all aspects of biotechnology, because it's worth sharing all the time. It has so many amazing applications that we have no shortage of things to discuss when we look at what biotechnology can achieve. This is a tiny snapshot of our members, and it's already out of date, as we were delighted to confirm 2 new members just this morning. So we always have a really wide spread of voices to come together and talk about the support for biotechnology. And our members are very diverse from across all sectors, from early stage startup companies through to global multinationals, and of course supported by our national associations within our National Associations Council. We couldn't do it without all of our members, and there's this place for everybody within our family. But getting to the topic of the webinar today, we're looking at how biotechnology really fits within Europe's industrial strategy. And this report is part of a very long-term discussion about how biotechnology delivers economically. It's delivered for a long time already, and the Y4 report that you're about to hear about really confirms this, and it confirms the scale of economic impact that biotech has for Europe. But what we want to understand is where we go next. How will biotech continue to grow economically? Will more sectors open up for it? And what does Europe need to do to enable that to happen? These are all extremely relevant questions that we will hopefully address partially this afternoon. So without further ado, we're going to get started. And this is an opportunity for you guys to all be involved. So we would really like people to ask direct questions through the chat function within WebEx. So please get your questions coming. You can ask them directly to Dennis immediately after his presentation. And then for the panel, you can also add your questions in there, and we will make sure that they are all asked. So thank you very much indeed for joining us today. And I'm going to hand over to Dennis now. If you want to switch your camera on, Dennis, and say hello to everybody.
Hello all together, and thank you, Claire, for the introduction. And I'm happy to give you insights about our thrilling study. It's about the economic footprint of the biotechnology industry in Europe. My name is Dennis Oswald. I'm the CEO of Y4 Institute, an European think tank. And why did we do this kind of study? If you really want to measure how an industry like the biotechnology industry affects the society, or the economy, then you need to measure the economic footprint. And it's not, you can also take sales into account of companies and you measure sales and employees. But the goal of this study was that we measure the contribution of biotechnology industry to the European GDP. And we work very close together with the statistical authorities to do it in the same manner like they are calculating the GDP. And the most important KPI is the gross value added. And I want to explain it in the beginning, and then you will see it goes through the entire study. The GVA is very simplified, the sales of a company minus the intermediate consumption. And this is the GVA. And if you sum up the GVA over all industries, over all companies, you reach the GDP. So keep it in mind, we are not talking about sales numbers, we are talking about GDP contribution of this innovative sector. My speech is structured as follows: a brief background and objective, then I will present the biotechnology industry in Europe at a glance, and then I will do 2 deep dives to industrial biotechnology and the healthcare biotechnology, and we'll end up with the conclusion. Next slide, please. The next slide, please. The most important takeaway for you is that the biotechnology industry contributes 80 billion euro to the European GDP. 80 billion. And we have chosen a very narrow part of the we have not measured the bioeconomy or life science, only the biotechnology sector. And it enables nearly 1 million employees in Europe. A comparison, 1 million employees work for the German automotive industry. So we have really huge impact. And why it's so important to measure this impact in these days? We have a great depression due to the pandemic crisis. We need to find and we need to stabilize wealth and health and innovation in Europe. We are faced with a drop of the GDP of 6.4% in the EU27, and we don't know what will happen in 2021. So we need to invest smart to create also wealth and GDP in the future in such innovative sectors like the biotechnology sector. Next, and this is something I want to point out, what the target is, the last point is that we really, did we do it? Why? Because this kind of analysis is not at hand. The statistical authorities don't have these numbers because the biotechnology sector is so diverse, right? And it's not visible in official statistics. So we did this job to calculate for the first time this innovative sector. Next slide, please. Here you can see, so we want to show the definition. It's an industry definition. We are focusing on the biological conversion. It's a narrow industry definition, but we wanted to create really this narrow definition due to the fact that there is an intersection of the life science and the bioeconomy. So we have 3 subsectors: agriculture, biotechnology. Sorry for not taking a deep dive to this today. The industrial and the healthcare biotechnology. Next slide, please. Here you can see the direct effects, because if we talk about an economic footprint, we are talking on the one hand about the direct effect of the biotechnology industry. That means all the value add what the companies within the sector creates. But next to this value add, there is a supply chain, the upstream effects, the so-called spillover effects. And we did also an input-output analysis so that we can also take into account what other sectors are contributing so that you within the sector can create gross value added, because it's a value chain you have to consider. And we can state and we calculated that only in the last 10 years, you created 50,000 additional jobs in Europe. And the direct job contribution is close to 250,000, and 34.5 billion euro are created as gross value added as GDP contribution. I want to set a spotlight on the growth rates, that's really something very important. The growth rate is double as high for the gross value added within this sector compared to the overall economy, and nearly 13 times higher concerning the employment effect than in the overall economy. So it's a driver of growth and a driver of employment, not only today, but it was also in the past and hopefully also in the future. Next slide. Here, this is the model I mentioned, what is the entire content of an economic footprint. We are measuring the direct effects, the indirect effects. That means all the effects which are due to your intermediate consumption, so your spend or the sector spend to suppliers, and also the impacts due to the induced effects, which means these effects are caused due to expenditures directly or indirectly generated by the incomes, right? So that's a model. It's based on Leontiev. He was awarded for the Nobel Prize for it a couple of decades before, and we did it for the first time for the biotechnology sector. Next slide. Here you can see the effects, how it sums up. So the 79 billion total gross value added and the close to 1 million total employment. And you can see the indirect effects and the induced effects and the numbers. I will explain a little bit later why they are so high, because you are a very specialized industry. So you are cooperating along the value chain with a lot of different players. So it's an important and high efficient and innovative part of the entire value chain, and that's the reason why you are stimulating such a lot of indirect employment effects and indirect gross value added effects. Next slide, please. Here you can see that the impact of the biotechnology increased over the years. And this is not the growth of the value add or the GDP contribution, but something more even also important. It's an impact to trade, right? Because if you talk to political decision makers, they have especially three major goals. First, improve GDP growth, employment, and the third point is at minimum a positive impact to trade, the trade balance. Then here you can see that this increased over from 2008 to 2018. It's nearly three times higher, and that shows this high global competitiveness of your products and a high industrial sovereignty. Next slide, please. Now I want to go in the deep dive for the industrial biotechnology. Here you can see that 1/5 of the employment effects is related to the industrial biotechnology. This is means 43,000 employees. It's and I want to point out the high labor productivity of 100,000 euro. Just a comparison overall, it's close to 40,000 euros, and it's really showing that the sector is a very productive sector as well. Next slide, please. What is the strategic importance of industrial biotechnology? And that's something I really want to point out, that this subsector has a role model function in the transformation to a more competitive industry, right? It's in line with the EU industrial policy goals. So we have these topics that we want to be carbon neutral economy as a long-term goal, a commitment to disruptive innovation. We want technology funding in this topic. And yes, we want to maintain Europeans' position as a manufacturing powerhouse, and that's something we will talk in the panel later on. But on the other hand, this industrial biotechnology offers technologies that save feedstock, use renewable materials and less energy, establishes cost-effective and more competitive processes. So it's a safeguard. This safeguards industrial sovereignty. Next slide, please. here I want to come back, and that's something if you talk about industrial policy. In the automotive industry, usually all the lobbyists, they say, please invest in automotive because it creates 1 or 2 additional euros for every invested euro in automotive. But we can also point out this messaging for biotechnology. And it's even higher than in the manufacturing of machinery or in the pharmaceutical industry. So the multiplier is 2.4. That means that you create 2.4 additional euros for every euro you are investing in. And the same as with the jobs, it's even also very high. So for every job you are creating within the biotechnology sector, in the industrial biotechnology sector, you're creating or supporting 4.2 other jobs along the supply chain. Next step. So now as a healthcare biotechnology deep dive, it's the hugest part within the 3 subsectors. So it's nearly 30 billion generated on gross value added. 175,000 people are employed. The labor productivity is 170,000, so 70,000 higher than in the industrial health economy. But it's not a point of better or less good. It's more like a characteristic of the different sectors. And I want to point out a couple of few more things. And please go to the next slide. Next slide. Next. Yes, and why it's so important, and that's why did I choose this example, or why do I want to give the spotlight on the healthcare biotechnology? Because in the pandemic crisis, we have to learn that unfortunately a lot of countries haven't had the perception that health is an investment. They are still thinking that health is a cost factor, and we have to foster this paradigm shift, and hopefully we can use one positive thing out of this pandemic crisis, that it's necessary to invest in health to create better health for the entire society. And we want to push this ahead also with this study, that health isn't a cost factor anymore, but it's health and health economy, and the healthcare biotechnology is a backbone of the more efficient health economy in the next years, hopefully. Next slide. And the good thing is that we are also in touch with WHO and G20, and I have the feeling that there are a couple of open ears to listen to this new story, that we should think about health as an investment. And I'm happy that the former WHO Regional Director for Europe, Dr. Susanna Jakob, published Health Investment is the smartest investment because it pays off. And I like to compare it with investment in education. What is a good education without health, right? So we need to understand that health, to invest in health is smart. Next slide, please. And this is something I'm proud of, that we did this additional analysis in the study as well. We looked at the healthcare biotechnology industry R&D, because maybe sometimes the society wonders why we have now the vaccines after such a short time at hand. Yeah, it's a continuous investment over years, right? And you can see that the healthcare biotech invested in average 4.6%, or the average growth rate was 4.6%. In the total biotech R&D, 4.5%. And it's an enormous amount of money the companies are investing in R&D, so that they develop and find products for future innovations, right? And that's a very important statement as well. So the investment of healthcare biotechnology R&D creates value, innovation, and deals as a macroeconomic stabilizer as well, and creates better health, as we can see now. Next slide. And here I just want to point out why it's so important. If we think about healthcare and healthcare biotechnology or the health industry, we have to see that it's only one element, a value element out of a value chain of healthcare, right? And the characteristics of this industry, of the biotech, they try to invent new products to create better health to society. And so we need to increase investments in healthcare biotechnology R&D. Then we can strengthen the health value chain and make it even more efficient. Then we can understand if we invest more in R&D, then also the production will increase. Then we have a positive economic impact to the European overall economy. And this generates, as I showed, also spillover effects to other industries within Europe. And that's important on the economic part, but even more important in our days is that we, with this smart investment, we really can improve our healthcare and we can improve the health of our society. Next slide, please. What are my conclusions? So first of all, the European biotechnology industry is a high innovative and very good growing sector within the European economy. We can demonstrate it with the more than twice as fast growth or double as high growth rates, or especially concerning the employment. So it's really a driver for employment in Europe, and we need to take this sector serious because it's a future for the future. It's a very essential sector, and the sector is certainly also in competition with other countries in the world. We will discuss later on, but we need to set a spotlight on such an innovative and a productive and stabilizing sector within our European economy. And this underlies that more than 230 jobs directly, or nearly 1 million jobs in the overall economy are secured. And that's something I made the comparison to the German automotive industry. I think it's really eye-opening how huge. Also, we took a narrow point of view on this high productive sector. It's comparable with the German automotive industry. The industrial sector offers the necessary technologies to realize strategic industrial policy goals, and that was very interesting. What's going on in Brussels? I think the study fits in the ongoing debate, and hopefully it gives some facts and figures and new sorts also to political decision makers. And last but not least, we have seen that the healthcare sector of the biotechnology sector, really helps us in these days to survive and to combat the pandemic crisis. And hopefully we will see a lot of other innovations so that we will face also the challenges which will come up in the next decades due to the fact that we have a strong biotechnology sector within Europe. On the last slide, you can see that we have published the study, and I really would like to welcome every one of you. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you have feedback or criticism, let us know. We are a research institute, and we really like to improve our research. But I think thanks to the statistical authorities as well, and they supported us very good with all this data stuff. And yes, thank you once again for your attention, and I'm very much looking forward to our discussion.
Thank you very much indeed, Dennis. It was an amazingly complex topic to try and tackle in a very short presentation time, so well done. While we're waiting for any questions to come in, because I don't see any yet, Martina, in the chat box. Oh, I see they're starting to come in. I will ask them in a moment. I wanted to come back to some of the points you made earlier in your presentation, Dennis, in that this is a sector with incredible knock-on effects and a very, very closely linked value chain. And I remember at the start of my career at the beginning of this century, which makes me feel like 100 years old, we worked in their Cambridge Biotechnology cluster as it was booming really quickly. But 50% of the activity inside that cluster came from drug discovery companies, and the other 50% came from the service side that enabled those drug development companies. So it's a huge sector in terms of indirect effects. And I have a question for you. It's like, how, as an economist, do you keep up with the expansion of applications within life sciences? Because it's an enabling technology rather than a destination. So the language and applications change on an almost daily basis. How do you decide what to follow?
I think that's a great characteristic out of the biotechnology sector, that there are so many interlinkages and cooperation, right? I like your expression that it's not a destination. I think you said this. Yeah. Because it's an enabler, right? And during our research, we got to know also from some of your members, we learned a lot how they interact with suppliers, how R&D works, that there are also important SMEs. And you can see in the high productivity numbers of some of the subsectors that they are very specialized to help and support also life science companies to improve productivity, right? And that's really amazing, I think. I hope this answered your question.
No, it's great. It was a difficult question, so I apologize for that. But we have some questions from the audience. So I will start with a question from Roland. He said, "Thank you very much for the presentation. It was very good. Are there GVA and employment numbers also available for 2019 and 20, which I slightly know the answer to, but I will allow you to say this."
Unfortunately not, because we are cooperating with the statistical authorities, and they deliver this with a time lag, the data, because it's very, the data we need is very deep drilled down. And unfortunately, it's not available up to date. And we thought, sure, we can try to forecast it, but that's then the reliability and objectiveness is not so strong. So unfortunately not, but hopefully we will update it. It's easy to update due to the fact that we have the model at hand now. And I think the next data will be available for 2019, will be available in August 2021.
Yeah, where I joined EuropaBio after the report, most of the work in the report was done, but I know how hard the team and WIFO worked to come up with the framework in which this was going to be measured, because none of these are easily accessible data. So yeah, I think hopefully we can then use this as a benchmark to move onwards and see how it keeps developing in the future. So we have a question also from Carsten, and I think this is something we will also cover in the panel, which says, "Can you say something about where you see the limitations for faster growth of the biotech industry in the EU?"
Yeah, the limitations. So I see, yeah, it's not a news for all of us who are close to this sector. Last but not least, it's always the question: how can we finance future growth, right? And where do we get investments? And how the sector is very competitive, but there are also other regions in the world who wants to have a piece of the cake in this innovative and this technology-driven sector, right? And so we really need to find out how can we create a mindset that we want to push biotechnology in Europe, and the benchmark are other countries in the world. And if we think about this mindset, then we certainly have also to discuss the regulations and such stuff. So you are the experts in this even more, I guess. But we need to have to create friendly circumstances for investors and companies who wants to grow in this sector. And I think there's still a little bit to do.
No, I think that's a conversation that definitely will come to in the panel. And it's one thing to be on the inventing end of a really amazing technology, and another thing to simply become a marketplace for it rather than delivering your own economic feedback from it. So it's something that Europe is working on, as we go along. So I think we have another question here from Stefan. He said, you highlighted the importance of the sector very comprehensively. Could you comment on the role and impact of public investment in this domain?
That wasn't the focus. That wasn't the focus within the study that we analyze either private or public finance. I just see there are a couple of initiatives going on that also the public investments may increase, hopefully increase in the future. I think especially, and that's something I want to point out. It's made, in my opinion, in the majorly driven in the healthcare part, but you shouldn't forget the agriculture and the industrial biotechnology, and that we have to invest in this as well, right? So now we have the pandemic crisis and we have some vaccines, and we see that that they deliver and they create a fantastic return on investment, but we should use this momentum also to think about what can we do for the other two very innovative subsectors as well.
No, again, public money has a very key role to play in the support of later stage biotechnology, through the constant pump priming of early stage research, even if you don't know where it's going towards yet. So we only see the amazing COVID vaccine response come from decades of investment in earlier stage research. It wasn't just arrive on its own overnight, no matter how much money we threw at it in the short term. It's, this is a 20-25 year investment program that has allowed us to do this now. And I think we have another question from Carolyn. Hello, Carolyn. Thank you, Dennis, for the very interesting study. She has a question based on the thought that we can only benefit from opportunities in Europe if our companies are globally competitive. Do you have any idea how Europe is positioned compared to China and the US? I should also say that this is definitely coming up in the panel discussion a little bit later.
Yes, that was the reason. That was the reason why I mentioned. On the one hand, I'm really surprised about the impact of the biotechnology sector in Europe, and I have openly talking openly to you. I was surprised about the high impact because we narrowed this sector. And sure, if you take the bioeconomy or the life science, and you can calculate, I don't know, an even huger sector, but I was positive, impressed, and also the growth rate. But the growth rates are from a low level, right? Low level. So I really see, and we looked to the left and to the right, and also try to figure out what's the growth rates in US and China and others. And that was the reason why we should take into account that there is a competition, right? And the competition not only for in R&D, in production, and so Europe can be proud of this sector, but I think we need to find a great pathway to accelerate the success in the future.
No, I think that's a very good point. It's a globally advancing sector, so Europe has to run to keep up for sure. And past performance is no guarantee of future performance either. So it's something that we must always take care of. But I think that's the end of our few questions so far. Oh no, hang on, I tell a lie. There's another one as well that's scooped in. Could you comment on what could be improved at Eurostat to obtain biotech-related economic data faster? Do you see a need to define additional data beyond GDP? So these are very good. That's a very good question.
Yes, it's a wonderful question. Digitalization. So I think there's still room for improvement how the statistical authorities collect their data. On the other hand, and that's something said, also the importance to deliver the right data from the companies, because these are inquiries, must be more focused, right? Because we are also working on economic footprints on company level, and sometimes we see what rough estimates they send to the statistical authorities. Then if they if they create a digital process, then it should be possible to calculate the impact very soon. Another point where we can improve is that they, especially for such a biotechnology sector, that they ask for some more, I don't know if it's feasible, but for more biotechnology related questions, so that the companies, if they can, also deliver how high is the part of biotechnology within their products. That would help as well. But we are in close touch, not only with our Eurostat, but also with the European statistical authorities to help and support them. We took the best available data. The second question was, do you see a need to define additional data beyond GDP? That's also very, very good questions. We are a couple of other research institutes. I think we place the GDP contribution in a political context, right? And so I haven't thought a lot about what additional KPIs should be fruitful, because my goal is, as I mentioned before, we are also in touch with the G20, that they understand, and not only the health politicians, not only the politicians who are in charge of agriculture or industrial policy, they need to understand that everything what they do has a reaction on the GDP. Right, and if we increase the GDP, and then last but not least, then we have more employment, right? And then if we have more employment, then we have more taxpayers, and if we have more taxpayers, then we can also have maybe more budgets to or financial resources to invest in. And I just wanted to get this mechanism in the minds of different policies, that it's placed interdisciplinary, right? And so I haven't thought about another additional data beyond GDP.
Thanks very much, Dennis. That was a very good economics question to wrap up the session now. So I'm going to give Dennis a rest now for a moment and introduce our panel discussion, which we are going to move to next. So I'm going to ask each of our panelists to switch on their cameras, which is lovely. And what I'm going to do now is we're going to spend the next few minutes looking at both patterns that we've seen until now, and also where people see patterns going forward in terms of economic development. So I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves with a very short, introduce what they do and the role of their company, and how they've seen the development of biotechnology economically to date in their organization. So Dennis gets a nice rest for a moment, and I will go straight to Elke from BASF and ask you to introduce yourself, Elke, and introduce how BASF has progressed within biotechnology.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. So my name is Elke Dunich. I'm a senior expert, global regulatory and government affairs biotechnology for nutrition and health at BASF. And BASF is a multinational chemical company with a headquarters in Germany and 117,000 employees worldwide. And we initiated our biotech activities in the 80s already, so nearly 40 years ago. And we offer a broad portfolio of biotech products ranging from specialty food and feed ingredients, enzymes, aroma chemicals, cosmetics ingredients, plant protection products, and chemical compounds. And BASF aims to double its sales with circular products to 17 billion euro by the year 2030. And biotech will for sure play a significant role here. Thank you.
Very much, Elke. So we'll move along one to Neil from Gilead. If you could introduce yourself and just look back at Gilead's pathway in biotech.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Neil Mulcock. I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs at Gilead Sciences. Gilead Sciences is a US-based, California headquartered company that specialized initially in virology, being the first company to develop a single tablet regimen to treat HIV, going on to discover a cure for hepatitis C, and more latterly transitioning towards oncology with the first approved CAR T therapy in Europe. We're about 12,000 people worldwide, with significant investment in Ireland, the Netherlands, and the UK.
Thanks very much, Neil. And then to Tineke, who is speaking not from a country, but from an entire country, as she heads up Bio.be.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm Tineke van Holland. I'm the Deputy Secretary General of Bio.be, and Bio.be is the Belgian federation defending the interests of the biotech and the life sciences industry in Belgium. And when looking back over the past 10 years, we have seen an enormous rise both at the level of employment, export, and R&D expenditures. So for the employment and the export, we have seen an increase of 31%. So today we have more than 35,000 people direct employment. And if we look at R&D expenditure, we have seen a rise over the past 10 years of more than 134%. So a lot of activity going on. As you might also have seen with the COVID crisis, Belgium plays an important role in the vaccines development and the production as well. And looking forward to the debate this afternoon.
Excellent. And then now that Dennis has had a rest, I go back to him very briefly. They also have a focus into healthcare. So Dennis, do you want to look at how you've seen biotechnology from your own experience change over the last years?
Yes, I think, thank you for the question. I think it's really interesting in especially healthcare biotechnology, right? How the perception is. And I sometimes wonder, it's very, very positive connotated, right? Since years. And sometimes I wonder why isn't there even stronger increase of the importance of the healthcare biotechnology sector over the last years. And as you mentioned, Claire, the success now with BioNTech or CureVac or all the others, this is related to investments over 20 years, right? There have been some visionaries who had an idea and didn't give up to do this research and to develop this kind of technology. And so I would like to see, so we have a good development or maybe a great development, but we need to increase and accelerate it over the next years. And I hope that one aspect will help, that the perception that that health is a cost factor, if we get rid of this, and if we foster the paradigm shift that investment in health is smart, then the question will come up where to invest. And then the question hopefully will lead to the point that an investment in industrial health economy, in healthcare biotechnology is smart, because it pays enormous off. And you need to take into account in the future not only the economic impact, but also the societal impact and the societal value of the investments in this sector. Take an example, the vaccine. If you would measure what's the societal value of this vaccine, it's billions, right? And I hope this is an eye opener for all of us. That we need to take it serious, where to invest, and health must be seen as a sector where we invest in the future.
Thanks, Dennis. We have Bernard and Agnes in the room as well from EuropaBio, but we're saving them until the end of the panel discussion so they can focus on the EuropaBio specific activities. So we're going to jump in straight with our first question here. So we've looked already at how our panel members have developed their biotech pathway to today. But now we're going to look forward a little bit, and I'm going to call Neil back up to the front and say, what developments in your own sector where you see strongest growth of economic activity linked to biotechnology? So, Neil.
Thank you, Claire. And thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel this afternoon. And to be honest, I really can't think of a better time to be talking about significance of the biopharmaceutical sector. As Dennis and others have outlined, we've seen the challenge now that governments are having to manage in this pandemic, trying to manage the pandemic whilst trying to sustain the economy. And I think COVID has provided us with a stark reminder of the fundamental importance of health and the resilience of healthcare systems, ensuring that they need to be adequately prepared to tackle health crises to ensure citizens' well-being. Because after all, health is essential, and only with a healthy society can we have a strong economy and economic growth. But I think there's a positive element as well that it may have come out of this pandemic, and that is the importance in many ways of working together. No individual government or agency or company could succeed on its own in dealing with this global health threat. And we are in many ways tackling this by learning by doing, taking one step at a time, making mistakes, of course, but learning also along the way. And I think it's clear that if we work together, that we stand a chance of overcoming this pandemic and paving the way towards Europe's economic recovery. And I think this is where the significance of the health biotech sector comes in. And we've seen over the years impressive efforts which are now materializing into treatments and vaccines. And Claire mentioned her experience of running the Cambridge Biotech system. My company's example is quite similar. If you think we've gone from, in record time, of initiating a clinical trial of a compound that we thought might be able to use to be able to treat COVID-19 through to seeking regulatory approval and making that a treatment available to patients in little under 12 months, which is quite a remarkable achievement and I don't think, would have been possible outside of the pandemic. But away from COVID-19, however, I think we're living in probably one of the most exciting eras in modern times, with promising health technologies being developed to tackle unmet need. Technologies that can bring to society breakthroughs, innovation, which can really shift the paradigm of how we treat care in the future, going from extending quality of life to actual cures. And if we look at the example of cell therapy and CAR-Ts, for example, these quite illustrate the point that Claire was making earlier. These personalized therapies represent a major step forward in the way that we treat certain types of leukemia, but where some patients are going on from certain death to being alive some years later. But of course, this was no overnight success. We have to go back nearly 50 years, or more than 50 years, before Jack Miller, while studying for his PhD at the University of London, first identified the origin of T cells. And then it took another 25 years, to the 1980s, for the first time that it was possible to demonstrate that a person's own immune cells could help fight cancer. And then fast forward 25 years to 2013, when René Bretchen and colleagues first published a study saying that CARs could be used to treat acute low-mode leukemia in humans. And then only in 2017, some 56 years after the source of T cells were discovered, did the FDA first approve a CAR-T therapy, and a year later by the EMA, I believe. So this was a culmination of decades of intense R&D, many failures, which resulted in where we are today. And health biotech has proven to be an incredible asset with great potential for Europe's economic recovery and growth. So the question really is, where do we go from here? How can we foster innovation? How can we incubate science and ensure a smooth translation from basic science into applied science? I strongly believe that we need a European framework. And now is the time to best really consider that with the publication of the Commission's pharmaceutical strategy. That needs to, I think, first of all, recognise innovation as a resource rather than a cost, as outlined earlier. And then we need policymakers to ensure a framework that nurtures and protects science and ensures predictability for the industry, provides the right incentives to research, and rewards that innovation, which is so critical for this goal. Thank you, Claire.
Thanks very much, Neil, for an astonishingly comprehensive answer to the question. Sort of past, present, and future all rolled into one. So I'll take it back a step and go to Tineke. Where does Belgium see the next economic development coming from biotech? You know, as you said, Belgium's been very much involved with advanced therapeutics development for at least the last 10 to 15 years. Where's your future pathway for economic development?
Yeah, so yes, indeed. So when we look at the biotech companies, we see a lot of maturity, let's say, from the R&D phase and the startup phase into, let's say, the upscaling phase, and where the opportunity lies in the future is in that upscaling, is in that bio production and in that biomanufacturing. And I'm convinced when we look at the different countries and the different regions, that the one who will win the race is the country, the region that will basically focus on three elements. And the first element is to make sure how can you continue to attract investments as a country. So there you need to make sure that there is a proper and prosper, let's say, fiscal and social security policy in place. That's the first element. And also, for instance, in Europe, you have lots of initiatives like Horizon Europe, like the recovery plan. It's also important that for those smaller biotech companies that they know where to go. Sometimes it's a bit difficult to know for these companies to know where to go to and basically to get these funds. So the first element is to make sure as a country that you have sufficient investments and that you're basically attractive enough in, let's say, the entire world. The second element, which will be very important, is fostering talents and making sure that you can basically enhance the development of skills. And we know the future in terms of development of skills, it's in the digital ones, and it's also to help, let's say, the digital shift, but also to help and make the European Green Deal available. And the third element is basically, let's say, the whole entire logistics network. If you look at cell and gene therapy, the proximity and the fluidity, let's say, in terms of the mobility will be very important. So I think if those regions, those countries that basically focus on these three elements, they will win the race and they will stay in pole position.
Thanks ever so much, Tineke. So from Neil so far, we've got really looking at the fruition of decades of research into advanced therapeutics now turning into the economic outcomes. From the Belgian perspective, you've got really the scale up of the manufacturing capability and what it needs to enable that. So I think I can take that back over to Elke and say, from the BASF perspective, where do you, from your own company's perspective, where is the economic pathway leading for biotech?
Yeah, I think, one, health is important, but climate is for sure important as well. And I really see a very strong push towards renewable-based portfolio in the chemical industry. And there will be a strong growth of alternative renewable feedstocks in the chemical industry for supporting the green transformation. Together, of course, with upscaling of fermentation-based products, both drop-ins and new ones. But this transformation will not happen overnight. And to successfully realize the industrial transformation of the chemical sector and globally remain competitive, very important, removing the hurdles for renewable feedstocks, modern biotech and renewable energy supply are key. And I think this is the basic three pillars I would like to address: renewable feedstocks, modern biotech, renewable energy supply in Europe.
No, that's excellent. Thanks, Elke. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how industrial biotech sort of grows exponentially over the next years, in response to Green Deal priorities and framework. I think it's a really exciting area to watch. Okay, so that Dennis has had a nice rest as well now since his presentation. So I'll go back to Dennis from more of an economist perspective. can you look into your crystal ball and see where you think biotech economic footprint is going to get bigger, in which sector perhaps, or what type of economic activity?
I would like to underline what Elke mentioned. I think these are the three major drivers of future growth. And I think we have a great opportunity with combining the contribution of a biotechnology sector to the climate challenge, right? I think a lot of companies also want to be climate neutral up to 2030, 2050. And I think we need this kind of technology for the future to achieve these goals, right? And but you can't only dream that may happen. And I think we need to, the EU Green Deal is the first step. We need, if we want to get a return on investment, then we need to invest before, right? And we need to find out, and if we invest, then we can create, in my opinion, exponential growth. That leads me also to Tineke. We have to attract investments in Europe. And so I think we need, hopefully we can combine our climate goals with the need of a even higher investment in the biotechnology sector. If we can achieve this, if we can connect these dots, and we can position the biotechnology sector as an enabler, maybe the one and only enabler to do so, then I think there will be a huge economic impact over the next years. And why shouldn't there, Tineke mentioned also the topic with the talents, and we need skilled people working in the sector, but the wording, but the sector is sexy, right? A lot of people want to work in this sector, and hopefully the image will increase as well, and so that hopefully 2030 we have 3 million people working in the sector, right? So I'm very positive, and maybe that's something why I'm also thrilled that we are allowed to publish this study today. I think it's the best timing ever. We couldn't have planned it better. But now there's a study with status quo, but now we have to use this and multiply the information so that we create a momentum of enthusiasm in interdisciplinary stakeholders, not only the politicians, also spin-offs who want to work in this kind of technologies, young talents who want to drive the success together. Who want to be part of this success story. I think that's something what we need to do right now.
No, that's great. I mean, one thing I've always really loved about biotech is the immense enthusiasm from everybody involved with it. It's like, you can't really shut people up once you ask questions about biotech, and that makes me really happy. So, I mean, so moving away slightly from Europe, we'll stay with Dennis from his sort of professional economist perspective. Where are Europe's strengths and weaknesses economically for biotech? And how is it positioned globally? The elephants in the room here, of course, are countries like the US, China. Where are we good and where are we bad positioned to those global players?
I think the ecosystem in Europe is not too bad, right? So I think we have done, or in the last couple of years, I think a lot happened to promote biotechnology on all different levels, and we have great innovations in Europe. We have some topics with regulations, right? Elke can tell a lot about it, and I think, but what's missing, in my opinion, is something like Biotechnology 2030. Where do we want to stand? So a clear, straightforward strategy what we want to achieve, and if you have this goal without a goal, you have no motivation, right? With this goal, you can operationalize what do you have to do to achieve these goals, and this would be great. And I think China has more like such goal setting, right? US is very strong as well. But don't forget about all other, also in Latin America, and they are also, so it's a global competition, right? And we have to be aware of it. We should be, we have a lot of strengths, so we are sitting on the train, right? But yeah, maybe we should try really to get on the pole position, and that's therefore we need a strategic plan, in my opinion, which covers regulation, digitalization, also HR, so human resources, technology, and so that we just identify where are the big topics in the future.
And that wraps incredibly nicely into the industrial strategy development, because obviously biotech fits across every single aspect of that. And so it's incredibly important to have the skills ready, because I know that in biotech, you're going to university to study something now. It doesn't mean that you are going to get a job that exists now. The technology and the application of your capability doesn't exist yet, which is always really exciting. You're always going into an unknown. So you need to put the work in early to ensure that you have the capabilities when the new roles come around. So no, that's a really great answer, thank you. And so I think I'll pull it back to Tineke next from a Belgian perspective, where you see, because Belgium punches above its weight in many ways in life sciences. So where do you see it poised in terms of strengths and weaknesses compared to the rest of the world?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Claire. I think the strength is that we have a very good ecosystem already today that was very agile, and that is also the reason why Belgium plays such an important role in the COVID-19 vaccine development and production. We have the academic centers here, we have the startups, we have the upscale companies, but we also have the bigger companies here. So we have that network that is there. Two, we also have had in the past couple of years a very good support from our regional governments and our federal government when it comes to research and development. So there is a specific tax system and support in that one. It will be key in the future to keep that and also maybe to see and to discuss what is possible in terms of upscaling and in terms of the bioproduction. For that, the good thing is that we have a new federal government since end of last year, and there will be a R&D bio platform which will be set up for a dialogue between the industry and between the federal government. It's under the premises of our Prime Minister. So there, it's a very important, let's say, structural dialogue to set the framework how to create basically that biotech valley. Where I see the pitfalls going forward, because the word competition was already said here today, is okay, we have kind of that pole position. How can we keep that pole position in the future? I think promotion is a very important one. We should not take for granted that everybody already knows the value that biotech has in our society. If I compare again to the car industry, if there's a new electric car, a lot of people in the street might say, oh, wow, this is great, this is innovative. When we talk about new biotechnologies, that's not always the same because it's not so tangible and it's not so visible. So I believe we have a huge job to do in terms of promotion of our biotechnologies, the value for it. And we also need to make sure that our students, because today there is already a war for talent. There is a war for talent. So we need to make sure that students or people maybe who lost their job in other industries basically have that wow feeling like, okay, I can be a game changer. I can help. I can bring solutions for climate challenges or for health challenges. And there I believe we should continue to work on, and that international positioning is very important because competition will only rise.
No, those are excellent points, thanks. And you can just see what Belgium does when it actually has a government. Imagine if it had a government all the time. It would be amazing.
I'll bring that message to our policymakers.
And I say that, of course, as a proud Belgian. So thanks very much, Tineke. So I'm going to step across to Elke now and ask this question about the strengths and the weaknesses, because obviously BASF is a European company that works globally. So where do you see, from BASF's perspective, the strengths and weaknesses of Europe?
Yeah, I mean, with Horizon Europe and the EU Green Deal, the European Union has the worldwide most ambitious research and innovation funding program in the world and the most ambitious policy framework for the green transformation. I mean, it's just amazing. And it's dedicated to some of the biggest societal challenges and designed to strengthen the EU in the global competition, at least it says. But however, investing into research and innovation and setting ambitious policy objectives is not enough. Innovative products and breakthrough innovations could bounce back on the reality of dense European regulatory frameworks and contradictory GG objectives. And modern innovations like genome editing, like modern genetic techniques, they need agile regulatory and policy frameworks to speed up time to market. And then, of course, I fully agree to Tineke and Dennis. I mean, innovations are developed faster and faster. Europe is facing increased innovation pressure from Asia and North America, and US is moving fastest into the bio-revolution due to their timely approvals or easy market introduction for genome-edited products, for example. And of course, there for BASF, I mean, we always target global approvals. So yeah, we will see. I mean, US is good for that, but of course we need approvals in Europe as well. So we are really struggling and fighting to get approvals here as well, continues to get approvals here, because otherwise there will be no green transformation when we don't get our product on the market. And so Europe is really challenged to increase its capacity to develop innovations very fast within short times to market. I think this is really crucial. I think the rest is there. I mean, we have a nice framework. We have wonderful funding opportunities, at least. We have to get them, but it's really, the opportunities are there. The picture is there, but where's the reality when you get stuck in the regulatory frameworks? And this is really not only a matter of investing in research and innovation. It's really about improving the capacity to commercialize newly developed products fast. It's about services, business models, bringing innovations to the market. And these barriers for assessing markets and scaling innovative business models need to be removed wherever possible. And in a way, of course, that health, consumer protection, and environment are always secured. And I think there I see the biggest challenges. It's really, we need agile regulatory frameworks.
Thank you. Really strong points, and I completely agree with them. You know, and in fact, Europe pays so much, invests so much into an incredible R&D base. And you talked about the results bouncing back, but of course they don't bounce nowhere; they bounce out of Europe. So you know, there'll be the economic impact and the economic benefits from European public investment will be felt elsewhere, and we need to feel them here because that's why we put all the money into the investment in the first place. Yep. Okay, so finally, I'll go to Neil as somebody who works for a US company that is global and also in Europe. And so where does Gilead, or where would you see the strengths and weaknesses of Europe, you know, from a US company perspective?
Yeah, I think quite clearly Europe is, you know, one of the from an economic terms, one of the single largest economic bloc in the world. And it has incredible strengths in terms of the basic science that is being done. The only question I think from us is what can we do and how can we work with governments and the European institutions to, as you say, Claire, sort of ensure that the fruits of that science stays or is benefited most by those of us that are living in Europe. I mean, there can be nothing more frustrating if you're a researcher or a clinician and investing all your career in developing a new technology and then seeing that technology go overseas to be developed, or even once it's out and developed, as a clinician, you're not able to use it on your patients. So, but in terms of answering your question, I would point to sort of 3 strong areas that we need to nurture or look at going forward. I think the first is we need a strong scientific base and a strong academic centre, because that is where all the basic fundamental research comes from. Secondly, we need a very good, strong, robust regulatory sector and agencies that can examine and what's being put for them in a flexible and a rigorous way. And I think the flexibility that we've seen from the EMA in the way that it's dealt with both treatments and vaccines to combat COVID-19 is an excellent example. And I think we need to see more of that and for that to continue post-pandemic. And then lastly, which is a point which I think we've been made earlier on this panel, is we need to ensure that we get appropriate reward for that innovation. We as a society need to sort of switch lenses and regard investment in health, the expenditure on health as an investment and as a resource, and not just simply look at it as a cost that needs to be sort of reduced or managed. And I think if we can tackle those 3 sort of legs of the stool, if you like, I think that will bode well for us having a very strong biopharma sector in Europe.
Thanks very much indeed, Neil. And I really, the precedent set during COVID hopefully have created new pathways that we can continue to exploit after COVID. And in fact, we have our National Associations Council will have a meeting on May the 10th to look at biotech after COVID. How do we learn from changes in processes and frameworks to continue enabling biotechnology? We know it's not going to happen at the same pace and scale as we've seen in response to a crisis. However, we know that these pathways are possible, and so we should use them more effectively. So we're going to move into our last question for the panel now. So this is your last chance within our audience to jot any questions into the chat function. And this is really looking very much to the future from how you measure future economic impact. Dennis has already talked a little bit about some of the KPIs, but how do we measure the future quantity of biotech being used? Because it's easy when you go to a biotech company and go, how many people do you have? How much money do you make? The question is, when the biotech products and processes go into sort of conventional companies and become part of their processes and their materials use, how will we measure that in the future? So with that impossible question, I will go straight to Dennis.
Oh no, thank you for the question. It's a tough one, but think about the following. So we just measured today, or we presented today, what is the economic impact, the economic footprint of the biotechnology industry, and we included the upstream effects. So who is contributing from the supply chain, so that you are enabled to create value add, right? But that's only upstream. Now for the future, I think we need to think downstream. So what happens with the biotechnology products and what are they used for? And I want to give you an example. So we measured for one pharmaceutical company 5 years ago, the social impact of an innovative drug. And that was, the idea was actually from Angela Merkel. She understood that health is an investment, that health contributes to the economy in Germany, but she asked, shall I invest more or less? And what happens to the voters and to the patients if we get more innovative drugs, right? And then we measured what's the impact if this innovative drug enters the market and the patients receives this drug. And the result was that we can save 110,000 life years compared to the standard of care, and 2.3 billion GDP contribution comparable. That was a news. And I would take this point because if a pharmaceutical company use biotechnology as an ingredient, then part of the 2.3 billion are related to biotech, right? And so we need to think that they're due to the fact that biotech is included in a lot of different industries, we need to define what is the product to the customer and how does it affect the product in the end. That's my idea, so that we really try to measure a societal impact, right? If it's feasible, but only to explain it would be fine, right? If you have a car and you have an ingredient due to industrial biotechnology or whatever, then maybe what is the benefit of this product in the end to society? And part of it's related to your activities, your business activities. So that means you should measure the handprint of the products you are providing. And I think this could be a first idea. Sorry.
No, I think that's really great, because it's an incredibly difficult. It's become incredibly intangible as it moves through the product value chain. So measuring its impact in terms of changes in carbon footprint or its life cycle are possibly where we're going to have to start looking also at how you measure the impact of biotechnology from an economic perspective. And luckily, the Green Deal and drives towards circular economy are going to allow us to do that more. And so I will go back to Elke now for the final response from the panel, because you were mentioning your BASF, how BASF looks at the circularity of its products as well. So I think this would be great to hear from a company perspective how you try and put metrics into this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be simple. I mean, the impact of biotechnology is measured by life cycle assessment. And biotech is a clear enabler of the Green Deal, and we can prove it, we can show it. And BASF is doing life cycle analysis studies since the late 90s, so now nearly 25 years. And it was really, it's always wonderful to have a study which is of interest to stakeholders, because it's an incredible complex story. So you always get a lot of time to explain it and to go through the different things, because life cycle analysis, I mean, exactly what Dennis said, I mean, it's really looking at the entire picture from really cradle to grave. From the product line, so including the entire value chain, including everything, and it's including economy, environment, and society aspects. And I think it's for each. We had a special tool for agriculture, for example, developed at BASF, Ag Balance, and it was really it was, I don't know, 80 different criteria for one sector, and then sub-criteria, and it really took ages. And afterwards, we had a flower to really symbolize the result in a nice way. And we really do it since a long time and use it as well for a decision, what kind of process to take. And for example, very early example is really riboflavin, our fermentive production of riboflavin with vitamin B2. And we had a life cycle analysis case study, and this has been included in the World Business Council for Sustainability Development in their Circular Economy Report 2020, last year, as an excellent and early circular economy example showing the benefits of biotechnology. It was really an old cow, and my colleague said, "Oh, don't use it, it's so old." Yes, it's old, but it's true. I mean, it's true. It was, I don't know, I think it was like in the 2000 or something, we switched from the chemical production to the fermented fruit, and it really shows a strong example. And so they found it very valid and wonderful that it's old. It's not only a pilot case, it's really on the market since many years. And it's really like our aim should be really to increase the overall sustainability of products. And it's true, many of our products, not only the product carbon footprint, how you produce it, this is one part, but on the other hand, a lot of these products greatly contribute to sustainability during their use and application, or to healthy nutrition, for example, or healthy feed additives. I mean, this is really very important in sustainability considerations as well. And so therefore, life cycle considerations need to be integrated into new policies to support the most sustainable choices. And there are some, I agree, Claire, there are some nice examples in the Green Deal as well. Let's hope and let's work on it that it stays.
Thank you very much indeed. And on that sort of peak economist, I can't even say it now, economist opinion, we will leave the panel discussion and say a huge thank you to all of our panel members. because we asked them to look deep into their histories and into their future for where the economic pathways for biotechnology are. And that brings us all the way back to EuropaBio, and Bernard and Agnes have been waiting very patiently to come and share their expertise as well. So I'll ask them to switch their cameras on now. That would be super. And what we're going to do now is just look very quickly at how EuropaBio takes these priorities and tries to make them a reality in terms of the policy and the regulatory environments through which biotechnology can be delivered to market. So I think we'll start with Bernard in the healthcare team. If you want to say hi, Bernard, introduce yourself and talk about how the healthcare team is currently working with priorities for biotechnology.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you can hear me. Good afternoon to all of you.
Yep,
My name is Bernard Grimm. I'm the Healthcare Biotechnology Director here at EuropaBio. And the first thing I wanted to do is really to thank the V4 team and Dennis in particular for the study. That is a timely contribution for the biotech industry, because we believe at the Healthcare Council that healthcare biotechnology is at a crossroad. As mentioned by Dennis, 4 out of 5 euro earned in biotech in Europe are generated in the health sector. And why do we believe that in the Healthcare Council that biotechnology is at a crossroad? First, and I think it has been mentioned several times, with the COVID-19 pandemic and the contribution of the biotechnology industry to vaccines, but also to treatment solutions, I hope even more in the future, there is clearly a shift in perception that is occurring from healthcare being a cost factor to a growth and an employment driver, especially in a time where we're looking for a recovery in Europe. The V4 study shows clearly how health biotechnology sector contributes to highly skilled job creation, is creating highly effective value chains in Europe. And the example that is for every job directly generated by healthcare biotechnology, 3 additional jobs are supported in the total economy. Biotechnology is obviously highly productive, but we have also the nice contribution to a trade surplus that is increasing, which has been shown. This, we believe, at the Healthcare Council is an extremely solid base from which Europe should build, as the health economy will be a major contributor to the European recovery, driving for what is called today inclusive growth. But we believe also at the Healthcare Council that the timing is critical, because we are in a period of really rapid change. We've, on one side, the bio-revolution occurring currently in the bioscience, and the acceleration of the digital revolution on the other side. And I think we are in Europe at a critical inflection point, where access to innovation and structural investment in health R&D will be critical if Europe wants to lead in this field. I think it has been mentioned, as you know, other regions in the world like the US, but also China, are moving extremely fast on those topics. And Europe needs now to decide whether we want to lead or we want to follow. This is why at the Healthcare Council, we want to have the EU that has the right regulatory framework to be able to compete on the world stage. And I will just give you a few examples because time is flying. This is why at EuropaBio, the Healthcare Council is working hard to foster innovation and blending regulation with its regulatory group, which advocates with the EMEA for speed and flexibility in its regulation. We are also working at the Healthcare Council to support innovation and patient access in advanced therapy in the working group that we have established, so that we can transform healthcare, and how it's delivered in the future, and advocate for new payment models for advanced therapies on the value that the new cell and gene therapies bring to patient, healthcare system, and society at large. This is also why EuropaBio is working in the rare disease space with its orphan medicinal product group to make sure that in the future the right incentives are in place to attract investment in this field, because this is a critical area where Europe has to catch up. This is also why EuropaBio has created more recently the Digital and Data Working Group to contribute to a new harmonized e-health data space, which is important for our industry, and design policies that enable the biotechnology sector to unlock the potential of digital technology, and not only to respond, but to anticipate society's healthcare challenges. And finally, healthcare biotechnology is already transforming our life. And in 2021, In these unprecedented times, EU needs to recover from this pandemic, and healthcare biotechnology is going to be fundamental in finding new treatment solutions. The V4 study shows how well the healthcare biotechnology is already positioned, but we want at EuropaBio that the EU is in the forefront of the bio-revolution and doesn't miss this unique opportunity for the long term and for the economic recovery. So making sure that we unleash the full potential of healthcare biotechnology is what we are aiming for in our council. And I stop here.
Thanks very much, Bernard, for the incredibly ambitious but priorities that have been set by all of the members within the healthcare councils. These are things that industry is actively working towards, and it's a pleasure to be involved in it. So I'll cross over to Agnes, who brings the reflections, the priorities from the Industrial Biotech Council.
Thanks, Claire, and good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I think we really heard many examples in the event today, really on how bio-based industries can contribute to the goals of the industrial strategy and the Green Deal. And of course, we welcome that the new industrial strategy refers to key enabling technologies such as biotech as strategically important for the EU's industrial future. And I think also in the panel today, we heard a lot about what we need to accelerate. And we know that the Commission is now working on updating its industrial strategy to take into consideration the impact of COVID, the global competitive context, and the acceleration of the twin green and digital transition. And so linking back, I mean, many things have been said in the panel discussion already, but one of the priorities, of course, also in the Industrial Biotech Council relates to the overarching policy and regulatory environment for industrial biotech products and processes. And linking back to some of the examples that have been made today, this includes a science-based, proportionate and predictable regulatory approach to current and future biotech innovation, including genome editing. And there are important discussions going on there where our working groups are also active. The research innovation framework is another one that has also been mentioned already. And we're of course now moving towards Horizon Europe, but I think one point to keep in mind there as well is around the public-private partnerships. We've seen now the implementation, for example, around the bio-based industries joint undertaking. And if you look really there, and speaking of impact, figures from that have shown that 84% of their projects will develop bio-based products with lower greenhouse gas emissions than the fossil-based counterparts. And also, they are expecting over 100 new products by 2024 to the market. So a lot has happened, of course, over the past years, and we've heard an example of that. But one thing where the potential still is there is of accelerating the market stimulation measures for bio-based products, which is important when it comes to the encouragement and stimulation. We've heard about the push towards a more renewable-based portfolio, but of course also the support to uptake is important there as well. And that's, for example, something where we have been working with our Bioeconomy Alliance to support. I wanted just to mention briefly as well, and it relates back to what also Tineke was talking about earlier about the awareness and understanding. And in our IB working groups, we also work when it comes to translating what is a very complex technology into concrete impact stories and really showcasing solutions from industrial biotechnology and the contribution towards the Green Deal and the EU's green transformation. And I will just finish by saying that we also just yesterday launched our EFIB Congress, the European Forum for Industrial Biotechnology and the Bioeconomy, which will take place in October. And that's also one of the forums that we have where we really aim to discuss advancements and innovations in biotech, also what are the challenges that still remain, and to connect the various stakeholders involved.
Thank you very much indeed, Agnes. And EFIB will very hopefully be one of the first face-to-face meetings that we have this year in October in Vienna. So we could not be looking forward to it more. It's a huge date in the diary. We actually got to go out and put like real clothes and real shoes on, which will be very nice. So I'm going to wrap up the webinar now, and I would say thank you so much to everybody. The amount of work that's gone into this webinar has been very significant, and of course it was underpinned by the amazing job that Y4 did in generating the report in collaboration with the EuropaBio team in the first place. This was not an easy or a quick process at all, and hopefully it's one that stands us in a very good position for continuing to assess the evolution of the economic impact of biotechnology. And we really look forward to following it up and seeing where it goes next. Then, of course, everybody should be involved in this conversation. And we would invite everybody in this webinar to stay involved in talking about how biotech develops economically. So, of course, the first thing I would say is you should join EuropaBio. If you work in the bioeconomy or in healthcare biotech, come and be part of the family. All of the voices work together very well across the different sectors. Of course, you can also follow us all the time. So we have a weekly newsletter that you should be getting. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. So stay part of the conversation. We have a really super busy schedule coming up, and that's even without EFIB in October. So we will encourage people to come to all our future open activities as well, because as you can see, it covers a lot of different topics. Finally, we have this year in 2021, it is our 25th anniversary, and we are very excited about this because it's a wonderful opportunity to look at what has happened that has really moved the dial in biotechnology over the last quarter of a century. And I'm incredibly sad to realize that a quarter of a century only goes back to 1996, which is a terrible realization. But what we're going to do is our members will nominate science and industrial changes that have really showed what biotechnology can do over the last 25 years. And we will be absolutely amazed. You know, examples such as the Human Genome Project fell within this 25-year period, and that changed the world in 1,000 different ways. So we've got a lot to look at and celebrate and use that to base the next 25 years of biotechnology as well. So we would really invite people to follow us on our celebrations through this year for biotechnology past, present and future. So I will end this now pretty much on time with a big thank you to all of our panelists, Dennis, who worked super hard on his presentation, and to all of our attendees today who came and asked excellent questions. We will follow up with the recording and the slides, and we look forward to welcoming you to the next EuropaBio event very soon. Thank you very much, everybody.